Hello! If you haven't already heard, Peridots is the new game by Niantic, the makers of Pokemon Go, Pikmin Bloom, Ingress, Harry Potter, Wizards Unite. This will be the company's first original intellectual property since their original game Ingress, and I am so hyped! The game is based around hatching, breeding, and raising unique creatures called Peridots, or as we in the business call them, dots. They have a wide variety of colours, characteristics, and features, from glitter and metallic patterns to horns and peacock tails. These creatures are designed to be virtual pets, with a focus on creating a strong relationship between you and your Peridot, caring for it from birth to adulthood, and catering to its specific needs, likes and dislikes. I cannot tell you how obsessed I am with this game already. So I've dug up as much information as I can find, and I'm going to flesh out that information with some speculation and ideas about how certain features will work, and things that I would like to see. And besides, I have basically been thinking about this game for years. Despite having absolutely no experience in coding or game design, I must have spent literally hundreds of hours thinking about how I would make the perfect spiritual successor to the Chow Garden. And now, I don't have to. Niantic has gone and made it for me. So, buckle up. This is going to be a very comprehensive video with everything we know so far about the game, the technology that Niantic is going to be using, and how I think that's going to affect the gameplay loop. I'll put timestamps in the description as well, if you're just interested in a particular topic. So, what do we know about Peridot so far? Let's start with the premise. What even are Peridots? According to the Niantic Labs website, Peridots are magical creatures which have been slumbering for thousands of years on Earth, and they're now waking up to a very different world to the one that they're used to. In terms of where they came from, what caused them to go into hibernation, and what's woken them up now, I honestly don't think we'll get much of an answer to this. I don't see it as being a game with much of a focus on lore. Given that they're described as magical, I think most of this will be left up to our imaginations, and we won't have to think about it too much. The interesting part to me is that we're also told the Peridots will need our help to protect them from extinction. If you haven't picked up on it already, this tells us that breeding Peridots is going to be a really big part of the core gameplay loop, and that our goal is to help repopulate the world with these lovely friends, as well as working with other players to diversify their species. What species do we know about so far? For anyone who has played a game which has a creature breeding mechanic, the phrase diversify the species should be jumping out at you right now. But for the uninitiated, I'll give you a quick rundown. We already know that Peridots will come with different archetypes. You can think of these like different breeds of Peridot. So far, we have confirmed some animal types like cheetah, peacock, and rabbit, some more fantastical types like unicorn, as well as some more abstract theme or pattern types like jester, glitter, metallic, and even a kintsugi type, which is a form of Japanese art of reconstructing broken ceramics and pottery with gold. So, for one thing, I think we can pretty safely speculate that there will be plenty more archetypes of Peridot in the game, each with their own typical features, patterns, colours, etc. We can see that the kintsugi dot here looks like it has a horn, and looks to me like it resembles a mythical creature called a Kirin, while unsurprisingly the rabbit dot has big long ears and the peacock type has a flamboyant tail and colours. Polygon references a press briefing released earlier in the week, which I can't find myself, but their article also references a clownfish type, as well as mentioning that they will come in a variety of shapes, sizes, colours and patterns. I find the shapes and sizes part particularly interesting there, and I like the idea of also having really big and small Peridot types. I can definitely imagine a big chunky elephant type or a long-legged giraffe style type, and contrasting that against a little floating nymph type or butterfly type, you know? I'm going to take a quick look through the images and clips we have so far and guess at what their archetypes might be. My first guess has already been confirmed. I was calling this little friend a Yeti, and looking through some of the other images there is reference to a Yeti archetype, as well as what looks to be a little Cyclops baby Yeti. But the more I look at it, especially compared to other baby Peridot pictures, I think this might just be a normal two-eyed dot with its head to the side. The baby ones really do have very big eyes. I think this one from the banner might also be a Yeti, with the same colours and the fluffy fur. I think this one here is part of the Jester archetype, even though it has horns and different ears to the first one we saw, which means there can be quite a lot of variety even within an archetype. And the last of the confirmed types is this unicorn dot. On the unconfirmed types, I'm pretty confident this one's going to be called a pharaoh type, and this one looks like a banana to me. I'm going to call these a lotus and marble type due to the flower on the left one's head and the pattern on the right one. And it's interesting, we can see a little bit of what the baby looks like here. My guess is the baby probably doesn't have all the traits right off the bat, so maybe it will grow a flower on its head or horns later like its parents. This one is tricky. I'm going to call it a forest type, with the leafy bits on its tail and the kind of dappled pattern, but it could be literally anything. This one I'm calling a plasma due to the pattern, and I think the horns are unrelated, but I love them. And we've got another baby which I'll call a speckled pattern, but maybe it'll grow into something completely different. Interestingly, the trailer seems to have mostly baby Peridots, but in order I'm going to say these are both fin Peridots with their little mohawks. I'll call this a luminescent. This one I'll be lazy and call alpine. We've got a rainbow, almost bee-like friend, I'll call a nymph. And lastly, this fairly plain one, I'll call a swirl, which I think will be one of the more common types. Last but not least, I've also taken the banner image and run it through a website that uses AI to up-res images, which has a few other Peridot types in. I'll call these a polka dot, dog, emperor and jackalope. There's also a bunch in the background, but even with the up-resing they're a bit too small to make out properly, so I won't even try to speculate on those. So as you can see, we already have lots of types straight out the gate, which is a big relief for me. Monster collecting games live or die on the number of creatures there are to collect. And while I loved playing Pikmin Bloom and Pokemon Go for a long time, my interest in both fell off when I collected most of the types and gotten bored of seeing repeats all the time. Not only this, but I am very confident that there will be a number of archetypes that you won't be able to get when the game first launches with the Peridots you discover in the wild or however you receive your first dot. With the focus on uniquely generated dots, breeding and DNA, I'm certain that there will be a whole bunch of archetypes that are only able to be created by breeding dots with certain traits or types or patterns together. And I'm expecting that to spawn a really engaged community of Peridot genealogists doing literal research into dominant and recessive genes and working together to very literally diversify the species. Looks aside, how else is each Peridot unique? The interesting thing about this game for me is that in theory, you should never see one Peridot that's identical to another. And even then, it seems like they'll each have individual personalities, likes and dislikes. For any of you who have seen my Animal Crossing improvements video, you'll know that the personality aspect is also a really big thing for me. Ultimately, in a game where interaction with the creatures is really key, even with unlimited designs, it can get very tiresome if everything about these unique creatures otherwise feels copied and pasted. And it really takes away from the specialness and ability to bond with any particular creature or character. One thing that is mentioned in the Polygon article is that Peridots will have desires, meaning you may have to take them on walks, feed them a certain piece of foraged food, or visit a nearby point of interest to keep them satisfied. I love this. As someone who is desperate to own a pet and often struggles to get out of the house, a little digital creature shouting at me because it specifically wants to eat a banana, or inexplicably is desperate to hang out at the local museum because that's its favourite place in the whole world, is just... it fills my heart with so much joy. I recently dog sat my neighbour's Shiba Inu, and all he wanted to do was sniff garbage, eat my yogurt, and walk anywhere except the place I wanted to take him.
Tofu, those bags are not for you, come on. This is not what I needed. Tofu, you know that's not for you. Tofu. Tofu. Tofu.
I feel like this game is truly capturing the authentic pet owning experience, and I love it. Let's talk a bit about feeding and raising your Peridots. So far, we've seen 5 types of food Peridots can eat. We've got half-eaten sandwiches, these blue berries, this kind of, I'm gonna call it a pear, this, I'm going to take a guess and say the game's going to call this a candy, but maybe it's some kind of fruit. And what I'm calling a vegetable from the promotional pictures. I have a feeling there will be more than just these 5 types of food, and I guarantee you there will be a food that's either incredibly rare or just exclusive to the in-game microtransaction-based store, which I guess will boost all the stats like hunger, happiness, satisfaction, and maybe give some kind of boost to the Peridot's ability to do other things like breeding, foraging, etc. And if you didn't know, foraging is going to be a key mechanic of the game. The Polygon article gives us a bit of detail on this, telling us the game will use Niantic's AR technology, which it's been developing and advancing for a number of years now, to not just place Peridots in the world dynamically, as we've seen with Pokemon Go, but to also be able to recognise different types of surfaces, such as dirt, sand, water, grass, and foliage. We can see this in a few of the promotional materials, with this little friend digging up a bunch of pears out the grass. and this pharaoh type digging up vegetables from the sand. The trailer also suggests the UI identifying snow, and I also wonder if some Peridot types will be better suited to, or even unable to, forage from certain types of terrain. I feel like that would incentivize you to collect new types of dot to allow you to get better resources from different areas. What does a Peridot life cycle look like? When I first saw the different types of food combined with raising unique pets from a baby to an adult form, any Sonic Adventure fans out there will know what I was thinking. In the Chow Garden, you start by hatching a plain baby Chow, and you feed it items you collect from the main gameplay loop to give your baby all sorts of different animal features. They can have horns, claws, wings, and all sorts of other features, which actually help them in competitions like sumo wrestling and running races. You can even find other things like pumpkins and bags and other items for them to put on their head and wear. Chow's adult appearance also varies a lot depending on how it's raised, if you're affectionate, mean, or even which character you play as. Combine all of this with the ability to get Chow in different colours, and you've got an almost unlimited amount of customization and rare Chow to make. If you want to go down the rabbit hole, I highly recommend Cybershell's amazing 1-hour video on what the hell are Chow. So I thought maybe Peridots would be similar with the emphasis on feeding and caring for them, but the more I think about it, the more certain I am that this isn't going to affect how they look. I have a feeling that how well you care for your dot will affect them. Probably at least in happiness, which might be a stat that's tied to your user level, and higher levels are going to unlock new features, items, and possibly breeds for you. Pikmin Bloom is a good example for this, where a lot of core features aren't available when you first start the game. Similarly, I don't think you will be able to breed your Peridot until you reach, say, trainer level 2, which you'll get to relatively easily by raising your first dot to adulthood, walking with it a few places, and feeding it its favourite foods, which they'll probably give you some of in your inventory to start off with. I also think the game will focus on you raising a small number of Peridots, or possibly even a single one, so that you can increase your bond and feel connected to them. However, I also suspect that you will be able to unlock extra slots for more Peridots slowly as your level increases, but you're not ever going to reach a Pokemon Go or even a Pikmin Bloom level of storage space for dots. So how is breeding going to work? What are we going to do with all these baby dots? Well, what we know so far is that Peridots can breed when you bring them to nests, which are real-world locations, and I suspect will be very similar to gyms in Pokemon Go. I think that similar to gyms, you will be able to leave your Peridot there to wait at the nest until another player comes along and decides to leave a second dot there, at which point magic will happen and a mysterious egg will be created. given that our goal is to not just discover more species, but generally to protect Peridots from extinction, as well as my suspicion that we won't be able to collect hundreds of them at once, it seems like releasing dots to the wild is going to be an important feature of the game. But why would I want to release my beloved pet? It does seem like a difficult thing to balance if this is part of the game, given the strong focus on bonding with your particular Peridot and its uniqueness to you. Polygon references a quote of dots being 100% unique and 100% yours, which gives me the impression that there won't be any kind of trading in the game either. I also think they will be very different to your average Tamagotchi or even Chows in, despite having a life cycle, we won't see our beloved Peridots die or go to heaven or anything like that. This is a very wholesome, child-friendly game, and I don't think Niantic want to deal with the bad press of upset children crying over their dead Peridots. My guess is, once you've raised a Peridot to adulthood, it will express an interest in leaving home in some way. This will be unprompted by you, the player, and be a choice the Peridot has made for itself, and that you can also say no to. Maybe if you favourite a Peridot or give them a certain item like a collar, that will stop it wanting to leave home, so you can keep your favourites. I think this will be bittersweet, but to balance that out, maybe old Peridots will come and visit us occasionally with special items they've found, and visit more frequently depending on how lovingly it was raised by you. This gives us the incentive to raise Peridots with care, all the way to adulthood. So even if you don't like the design, they won't be able to leave your inventory until they mature. And then this will free up space for new dots and possibly net you rare items in the long run. But what about the AR element? What is Lightship? I've touched on it a few times here and there, but I think Peridot will be much more focused on AR than any of Niantic's other games. While many of the features might have a non-AR mode, like petting and feeding your dot and walking on an overworld map to locations, I think this game will prompt you to use the AR a lot more, and will be trying to demonstrate its more advanced AR features. The Polygon article refers to Niantic Lightship, which is actually a technology and developer platform created by Niantic. This was launched in December 2021 and developed with data collected through all of their games, especially Pokemon Go. If you've played Pokemon Go in the last few years, you've probably seen some features like the ability to take dynamic photos with both yours and your friends' Pokemon alongside you, and taking 3D scans of locations of interest and more. Watching Niantic's 1-hour video on the launch of Lightship, don't say I don't do my research. You can see a lot of the technologies which they're going to pull through into Peridot. So, here are some of the things not mentioned in the promotional materials that I think are going to turn up in the game. Bear in mind, some of these features might not be available at launch because they'll want to launch a minimum viable product first to test for bugs, etc., before they throw in every single feature they want to add. Number 1. Better integrated AR experiences. I think we'll see a lot of AR integration around the points of interest, so your standard Pokestops and nests, which encourage you to look less at a map, if there's even a map available, and instead having you point your camera at the horizon, looking for things floating above buildings and locations in real time. Not only this, but I think we'll see features on a more personal scale, like playing fetch with your Peridot in your living room and playing frisbee with them in the park. Number 2. Shared AR spaces. We've seen this a little in Pokemon Go with those photos I mentioned. The Lightship video says it can support up to 5 players concurrently being synced in a dynamic shared AR experience. I think the same photo mode feature will be available at launch, and this will be further developed for features like not just taking your own Peridot for an AR walk, but walking a pack of Peridots with your friends. You could even meet up for Peridot playdates. Last but not least, number 3. Persistent placed objects in a 3D world. This is mentioned in their December keynote video as one of their up-and-coming features, and will likely be a feature that they will want to demonstrate in their new flagship game.
Every new technology needs an application to really highlight the capabilities of that technology.
That's Peridot. Essentially, by creating a detailed ground-level 3D map of the world, users can place and even hide objects in specific places in the 3D world, which persist and can be seen and found by others. For Peridot, this could be anything from hiding little notes, a way to swap items with others, or a whole new minigame in itself. It sounds like they'll be announcing more details on that project in May 2022, so we might hear more about that down the line. So that is everything I've pieced together from 6 vague paragraphs, a 30-second trailer, and a couple of images about Peridot. Am I the only one who's excited about this? Have I gotten you excited about it? Knowing my luck, by the time this video comes out, the whole game will have dropped, and all of my speculation will be completely wrong. But you know what? I had fun, and that's what matters. I'd love to hear all your thoughts in the comments, and I think it's very important that you share this video with all your friends. The YouTube algorithm will only show my videos to people if it knows you enjoyed it, so do give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next thing I'm inexplicably excited about. Have a wonderful rest of your day, stay safe, and I think you're great. Bye.